Dr. Nelson.
Yes.
Nice to meet with you again.
Oh, okay.
I really enjoyed observing your lesson today. Today I observed Dr. Nelson's lesson on the events leading up to the Revolutionary War with her fifth grade social studies class. So first of all, how do you feel like the lesson went?
I think it went pretty well. I think most of the students understood what we've been talking about and have recall and can do what I want them to do, are successful with that. So it went pretty well.
All right, so as you think back about the lesson, what are some things that you heard your students saying or things that you saw them do during the lesson that made you feel like that it went well? What were some indicators for you?
Well, they were discussing during the times that they were supposed to discuss their answers. They were discussing. I don't think anybody during the actual middle part of the lesson, I don't think that there were very many of them who were off task, just playing around or anything like that. They were paying attention. They were concentrating on what they were supposed to be doing, and they were taking part.
Okay. So you said you saw them participate, you saw them communicate with one another. I witnessed that as well. I felt like they were all actively engaged in the lesson, talking with their classmates at their tables and discussing the questions that were being asked. So what do you recall about your own behavior during the lesson? Do you remember anything that you did during the lesson, or what any specifics about what you did during the lesson that you can recall?
Well, during the first part of the lesson, I stood a lot by the podium. I don't like to just stand a whole lot. And during the middle part, I had to, of course, with what we were doing, I was over at the computer, and my overhead projector is connected to the computer. It's not wireless, so I felt like I was limited in movement.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been maybe better if I could have moved around the classroom a bit more.
Okay. So you're saying your movement was limited early on in the lesson, but then as it progressed, I know there were times when you were up moving around from group to group, so there was kind of a balance there, but you just felt like maybe it could have been better if you would have had more proximity to the students throughout the lesson. Okay.
And the latter part, when they were writing, I was more able, to move around with them and everything.
Okay, good. How did what you observed compare with what you planned? So, with what you saw in the lesson, did it turn out the way that you anticipated, or were there some obstacles that you had to overcome? How did you feel that the planning into practice went?
I think it went pretty well. Now, I could have moved the tables earlier that I had to move and gotten them into groups probably a little earlier. That took, some of my time. When they were writing, it did not go exactly as I had really wanted that to go, for them to recall what they had remembered from today's lesson as compared to what they had forgotten that we had discussed earlier in the week. So that's when I decided to just go over a few more things with them, because they seem to have more difficulty getting that down and writing their ideas on paper or coming up with even the ideas.
So you think maybe recalling the lesson for the writing portion was a challenge for them. So what maybe could you have done differently? Like maybe give them a writing prompt, like specific something to write.
Think so.
Tell me what you know about something
I think
specific.
that would have been better if I had done that. I don't like to just give them an open, something on a writing idea. The prompt is better.
Okay. As you reflect on the goals of this lesson, what can you say about your students' achievement of them? So, the goal for the lesson obviously was to review the events leading up to the Revolutionary War. So how do you feel like was that overall goal achieved in your opinion?
I think so. I think for the most part it was. You always have some who are not going to necessarily get everything that you want them to. There's always something that you could have done differently, or you think maybe that if I presented it just a little bit differently, maybe all of them would have gotten it. But, I think most of the time, all of them are not going to be 100% successful on everything.
Okay. So, basically, the majority of the students understood and
I
really
think
got
so.
what they were meant to get out of the lesson. You're
I
always
think
going to have
so.
one or two that you need to kind of pull
Right.
up, and
Right.
and that's when we have some different methods for reaching
Right.
those. So what were you thinking when you decided to change, or I'm sorry, what were you aware of that students were doing that sent you to change the format of the lesson? So I guess a better way to put that would be, with that being said, what could we have done differently during that lesson that could have maybe reached those that didn't get it? That maybe those one or two that maybe were reluctant to participate. Do you think of anything, or can you think of anything that maybe we could have done to get that out of them or to help them participate in the lesson a little bit better?
Some of them are shy,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to change the groups every week and the way that they are chosen and things like that when we do participate with that one. But I might could have pulled in some of the shyer ones to be the team leaders on the game part that we played.
Okay.
Um,
I like that. So you're saying that basically, if you would have maybe put them in more of a leadership role in the group, it kind of would have forced their hand into being the person who pressed the buzzer,
Right.
the person who responded with the
Right.
correct answer, and so that maybe would have helped them to participate throughout the lesson a little
Right.
bit better. It's a good idea. And the way that the groups are structured, obviously, that's important too. I know that
it is.
you don't want the same little cliquey group of
No.
kids to be together every time. The ones that are friends with each other and comfortable with each other, well, they would always stay together. And then
Right.
the ones that are maybe not so socially accepted, they're going to be kind of stranded out there. So I think that's a great idea to vary those groups each time.
And that's why sometimes, I will let the students say, okay, pick a girl, pick a boy, like we did
Mhm.
this morning, and then those who are left, if they're not picked, they get to pick the group. Sometimes I will let put them into certain groups or however I think they might work together well, and then allow them to choose their leader. And I just do it different ways.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes one works better than another. Sometimes you just kind of work into it.
Mhm.
So I like to make different ways that we do that, not just use the same format every time with that.
All right. So what hunches do you have to explain why some students performed as you had hoped while others did not? So maybe back to what we were just talking about, obviously their social skills and just their shyness maybe was
Mhm.
one thing that we could look at as far as why they were not willing to participate. But what can you think of anything else that you might could think of that would be a reason for them to not um, have performed as well during the lesson?
Well, for example, the little blonde-headed boy that sat
Mm-hmm.
over here, he has had kind of a rough week. I don't know exactly what's been going on, but he didn't have his homework earlier in the week, and he's a pretty smart kid, but he needs to make sure he gets his work to
Mm-hmm.
understand it, and he didn't have it, so he didn't understand as well. Didn't really, know all the answers as well as he should have or would have if he had had that. And while I worked with him a little bit extra earlier in the week, as I said, when he didn't have that, but still, um, we were not able to get him to where he should be. And I don't know if he's just had a bad week or
Mm-hmm.
it's just there's been something about him this week that's
So
just been a
it
little
could be
different.
something going on at home.
You never know.
You know, it's just
You know,
hard to tell what all these
Mhm.
kids are going through, and
Right.
that's one thing
Right.
that I feel like some teachers overlook from time to time is that these kids have lives just like we do, and we
They
never
do.
know really what they're going through once they leave us.
No.
And we can try to give them the best environment possible, but if something's going on at home where they have no support, that's going to make it tough. So that's definitely something to consider, and maybe there's something like you said, giving them that extra one-on-one time to try to pull them up a little
Mhm.
bit when they're not getting that support at home. I think that's a great idea. So let's see, what did you do or not do to produce the results that you did get? So what were some strategies you used to get the students to participate and actively involved in the lesson?
Well, try to give them little hints if they're having a hard time. Um, that's a tough one. as I said, I didn't get to move around as much, so I think that was I could motivate them more if if you could touch one on the shoulder, kind of pat them, sometimes just a little. Okay, I can calm down a little bit, that kind of thing, make them a calming effect. That helps out sometimes if they're getting nervous. When we play the game that we play, the points are there, and sometimes some of the kids, if they have a low number of points with their team, they're afraid to answer. They won't try because they don't want to lose points. And I would rather they made an effort, but I haven't been able to manage to get that across very well.
Well, no, I did notice though you made it a point of emphasis at the end of the lesson to say, just because your team won or didn't win, that doesn't make any difference. What we gained from this is the knowledge that we were trying to gain from covering these questions and discussing these topics of these events that have happened that led up to the Revolutionary War, and that's the most important thing. That's what we're gaining from this. Is nobody's winning, nobody's losing. I felt like that was a good thing to make that a point. And I could tell that you talked to them about that before. That they knew that was, we're not, we're competing, but it's fun, and it's just a fun way to do it. One thing that I noticed too that you did that I really like is there was that gradual release of responsibility. You started out where we were all working together as a group, and then throughout the lesson there was gradual release to the groups where they were working together to answer the questions and participate. And then by the end, when they did the reflective writing piece, it was individual work. So that was one thing that I really liked about the lesson was that gradual release of responsibility, and I feel like that helps them really gain confidence in in what they're doing and in their education just in general.
And sometimes they need the opportunity to think through on their own. Now, sometimes they need to hear the sound, but they need to read, they need to hear, they need to write.
It's that variety.
Yes.
It's that variety. You're exactly right. I agree. What personal learnings did you gain from this experience? So on a personal level, what do you think? Is there anything you can take away as far as your personal practice?
Well, I could have been a little more prepared, as I said, with the room arrangement for one thing, and maybe some of the questions weren't as good this week as they could have been. I think a couple of them were just a little too difficult. I could have made that a little more child-friendly, I guess. I think that they were just a little too difficult for the age group.
So you're saying if you'd done some question modification, maybe that would have helped more students participate. And really, I mean, I felt like there was a really overall, as a whole, the class as a whole, I felt like there was a lot of participation. I mean, there were maybe just one or two students that I could pick out and say, this child didn't say, didn't really do much of anything. But even with that, having all those different pieces throughout the lesson, at least they are responsible for something that they're, putting forth, some effort, some work that they're putting into the actual lesson, so that you have some kind of, formative assessment that you can get an idea of what they know one way or another. Because I know that, this age, and really any age from about this grade on, some students are just going to be reluctant to speak in front of their peers.
They are. And there are a few of them that are like that. They're just shy. They don't want to, they're scared of being wrong. And that's I want them to feel safe in here, but sometimes I don't always know how to make them feel safe and whether they can, it's okay to answer. If your answer's wrong, that's okay.
We're all working through this together.
And if you've got the wrong answer, we're going to find the right answer and you're going to learn from it. But they still are afraid.
I understand. I think that's a common problem. But I feel like also that you provide an environment that they do feel comfortable, and they're on task. Just at the beginning of the lesson, they all had their things out. They all were prepared. They were all looking for the answers, actively looking and participating. So that to me signals that, hey, they know what the expectations are.
Right.
When they come in here, they know what they're supposed to be doing. That's big.
I try to keep it in a routine.
All right. As you plan future lessons, what insights have you developed that might be carried forth to the next lesson or other lessons? So what about this lesson you think we would carry forward to either improve or maybe things that you would do again?
Well, the way we use the crossword puzzle and the activity on the back of our little newspaper as a little quick review before we actually start the main lesson. I think that works out well for them. Just gives them a little bit of remembrance, brings the vocabulary words back to the front of their mind, maybe a little bit at the beginning. And I will do better with my writing prompt at the end, though. That one was not well done. So I think I need to think through that and maybe, I don't know, just be more to the point.
Okay. So giving them more of a direct writing
Mhm.
prompt, and would definitely use the crossword puzzle again. I agree with both of those. I felt like, that to start the lesson off with the crossword puzzle and get them talking and discussing the topics that are going to be in the game and that you're going to write about later, that just kind of gets their minds working into that mode and thinking about those topics. But also, and I've had that experience before too with the writing prompt. And I don't know what it is psychologically about giving somebody a writing prompt. If you just tell them write about anything,
I can't write about
they
it.
can't.
There's nothing.
There's so many that will just
Right.
sit there and I don't know what to write about. But if you give them something very, very specific,
Right.
a lot of times you get so much more in-depth answers. If it's just than just, and I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a psychological reason for that. But I really, it's interesting to me. But
I was not
it's so true.
specific enough with this one, and I need to do better with that one. And that was a little different from anything I had been doing with when I give them the writing prompts. We try to change things up, and that was just that one just one I probably won't use again.
Okay. So as you think back over our conversation, what has this coaching session done for you? What is it that I did or didn't do that was a benefit for you? Is there anything that I helped you think about, or?
Definitely, you brought up some points, just a few things that when I have time to sit down and think about what we've discussed, I think that will help me with planning and with some ideas maybe of what to do, like the specific prompt and things like that. Maybe things that can help me pull them all in whenever there's one or two or whatever who are not engaged, maybe to pull those in.
Okay.
To be more careful.
All right. And last question: what could I do differently that could help you in a coaching session like this? Are there, in having these conversations, are there any other things that in a future lesson observed that you might want me to look for, or something else, some other kind of feedback I could give you, maybe that would be helpful or beneficial to you for future lessons? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, it's hard to be specific, but I do like the opportunity to talk with you before you come in, so that you know what's going to be going on in my classroom, what to look for, and then as we talk afterwards, if there's something that you have seen that I was not looking for or not prepared for, I feel that I feel like you're comfortable, and after we've talked, especially that more comfortable to point that out to me. And if you've seen something that I need to be doing differently, or if a way maybe something that you saw that I didn't notice, because when you've got 20 kids
You're
in
only
the
one
room,
set of eyes. I understand.
Sometimes that they can get past you
Absolutely.
easily, and it's easy.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to miss one who is not being brought into the lesson and who's not being engaged.
Sure.
So I think when somebody comes in and observes it, and more than likely it's going to be the same child quite often. So if you notice one, then maybe I would be more alert to watching that one in the future.
So just looking out for those students who aren't engaged, maybe trying to develop some strategies to get them to participate a little bit more. And from my observation today, I felt like everybody in the classroom was engaged at some level. There were a couple that were reluctant to participate, and maybe that was probably the only drawback. Um, and that's a touchy situation. I mean, I feel like the things we've already said, we've touched on that really, but um, I feel like it's just a situation where you don't want to force them into an uncomfortable situation.
Right.
And then, embarrassment and that kind of thing comes into play. And we don't, obviously I know you don't want to do that. But I do enjoy the conversation too, because coming into a lesson like this, I have an idea of what to look for, and I feel like that's something that in a lot of observation structured environments, we get away from sometimes is the actual talking about what to look for, what's going to be going on during the lesson, and then having this reflective piece, I feel like it's helpful too, because it just kind of makes you think about what you've done and actually talk about how things went and that kind of thing.
And I like to look for new things, new strategies that I can use, because kids today, you have to have changes and you have to bring new things in. And if you are aware or find anything in the future that you think might be helpful to my room, I appreciate your pointing that out or bringing it to me. And
sure, if I come across any kind of
did you try this or
new technology or anything like that, I'll definitely keep that in mind as I move forward. So I'll be looking for new ideas, and if there's anything I can do to help you in the future, just let me know. But I really appreciate you doing this for me and helping me out, and I hope I was some help to you.
You have been. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.